Qatar 2022. Extra time in the round of 16. Messi steps up to the penalty spot against Australia, and half the stadium holds its breath because everyone in that stadium knows something that most casual fans don't. This man, the greatest player who has ever lived, is not automatic from 12 yards. He scores. But rewind the clock 4 years and it's a very different story. Russia 2018 against Iceland. Messi steps up. Hannes Halderson saves it. Rewind again to 2016, Santiago, Chile. The Copa America Centenario final. Messi steps up in the shootout and he skies it over the bar. He is so shattered by that miss that he announces his retirement from the national team right there in the mixed zone. He walks it back weeks later, but the moment says everything. The best footballer of his generation has a complicated, sometimes brutal relationship with the easiest shot in football. So here's the reframe. We are taught to believe greatness means consistency everywhere, that a genius has no weaknesses. But Messi's penalty record tells a completely different story. And once you understand why, it doesn't diminish him, it explains him. Let's put the numbers on the board first because the stats here are wild. Across his career, Messi has taken around 150 penalties for club and country, converting roughly 77% of them. That sounds fine until you put it next to his peers. Cristiano Ronaldo sits at around 83 to 84%. Robert Lewandowski, a striker not even in the same conversation as Messi for overall talent, converts around 91% of his penalties. Harry Kane sits around 86%. Even Zlatan Ibrahimovic, a player known more for his ego than his technique, is up around 85%. Messi, the man who can slalom through 6 defenders and finish with the outside of his weaker foot from an impossible angle, is statistically one of the worst penalty takers among the sport's true elite. And the pattern gets sharper at the biggest tournament of all. At the World Cup specifically, Messi has taken 8 penalties across 4 tournaments. He's converted just 4. That's a 50% success rate on the single stage where legacies are written in permanent ink. He is the only player in World Cup history to miss penalties at 3 separate tournaments, and the only player to miss 2 in a single edition. Compare that to his overall open play scoring numbers at World Cups, where he's the all-time leading goal scorer in the competition's history. From open play, in the flow of the game, he is untouchable. From the spot, standing still, 12 yards out, no defenders around him, he becomes strangely human. So why? Let's go to the tactical board and actually break down what a penalty kick demands, because it's not what people assume. Picture the pitch. Green grass, white lines, an empty penalty box except for you, the ball, and a goalkeeper 8 yards away. Everyone assumes this is the simplest shot in football because there's no pressure from defenders, but that's exactly backwards. A penalty removes every single variable that makes Messi dangerous. His game is built on improvisation, reading a defender's hip angle in real time, exploiting a half second of hesitation, using pace and unpredictable footwork to create chaos that a keeper can't process fast enough. A penalty strips all of that away. There's no defender to read, there's no space to create. It's just you, alone, with time to think. And time to think is Messi's actual kryptonite here, because it turns an instinctive genius into someone who has to consciously decide, and decisions made under isolated, static pressure activate a completely different part of the brain than split-second reactive brilliance. This is actually backed up by sports psychology research on elite performers. Penalties are one of the only moments in football that function almost like an individual sport crammed inside a team sport. Basketball free throws, golf putts, penalty kicks, they all share this same structural trap. Total silence, total isolation, and enormous stakes riding on a mechanical action you've rehearsed 1,000 times. Paradoxically, the players with the most freakish improvisational instincts, the dribblers, the playmakers, the ones who thrive on chaos, often struggle more here than clinical, mechanical strikers who've built their whole game around repeatable, low-variance technique. Lewandowski's game is built on positioning and mechanical precision. Messi's game is built on chaos and reinvention. A penalty rewards the first mindset and can actively punish the second. And that's really the answer to the question everyone asks. How can the greatest player ever also be shaky from the spot? Because those two facts aren't actually in tension, they come from the exact same source. The same unpredictable, reactive brilliance that made him impossible to defend for 2 decades is precisely what makes a static, isolated, premeditated shot harder for him than it is for a far less gifted forward. Legends are built by being flawless in every single facet of the game, game. They're built by being so devastating in the facets that matter most that a weakness like this becomes a footnote instead of a headline. There's one more piece of evidence worth putting on the board, and it actually strengthens the case rather than weakening it. Look at Messi's numbers in shootouts specifically, as opposed to in-game penalties. In shootouts, he's scored on roughly 11 of 13 attempts, close to 85%, noticeably higher than his in-game rate. That seems backwards at first. Shootouts are supposedly the most pressure-soaked moments in the sport, but think about what's actually different. In a shootout, every single taker on the pitch is facing the exact same isolated mechanical demand. There's no illusion that instinct or improvisation should save you. Everyone knows it's a coin flip skill contest, and Messi seems to relax into that shared, leveled context. It's the in-game penalty, the one moment inside an otherwise fluid, chaotic 90 minutes where he alone has to switch gears from creator to mechanic, that trips him up. The shootout doesn't ask him to be two different players in one match. The in-game penalty does. It also explains something coaches and commentators have quietly noticed for years: why Messi has, at multiple points in his career, handed penalty duties to teammates entirely. At Barcelona, players like Luis Suarez sometimes took spot kicks instead of him. At Paris Saint-Germain, Neymar and Mbappe rotated the job. This wasn't Messi ducking responsibility. If anything, it's the opposite: a quietly brilliant piece of team management, recognizing that his value to the team is maximized when he's threading the final ball or dragging three defenders out of position, not standing over a dead ball performing a skill that neutralizes his greatest gift. Compare that to Ronaldo, who has famously insisted on being the primary taker at every club he's played for, treating the penalty as a personal statistic to pad. Two completely different philosophies of greatness, and neither one is wrong. They're just built on different foundations. Ronaldo's game has always leaned mechanical and repeatable, gym-built power, practiced technique, so the penalty spot is a natural extension of his strengths. Messi's game was never that. It was always about the improvisation a penalty specifically forbids. So next time Messi steps up to a penalty and the whole stadium tenses up, remember what you're actually watching. You're not watching a flaw in the greatest player of all time. You're watching the exact same brain that invented moments no coach could ever draw up on a board, forced for 6 seconds to do the one thing it was never built for: stand perfectly still and think. And maybe that's the real lesson buried in all of this. Legendary status was never about being unbeatable in every single circumstance. It's about being so transcendent in the moments that actually define a match. The dribble past three defenders, the pass no one else sees, the goal manufactured out of pure chaos, that a shaky penalty record becomes nothing more than a strange footnote in an otherwise flawless story. Messi didn't become a legend despite the penalties he's missed. He became a legend because everything else he does makes those misses almost irrelevant. Now here's the tactical board reconstruction. Watch how this actually plays out in real time. Messi walks up. He's historically favored placing the ball to the goalkeeper's right, low, with a similar run-up almost every time. Over a 15-year sample, that pattern becomes data, and data is exactly what elite goalkeepers study before a game. Keepers now have scouting reports built specifically around Messi's penalty tendencies, the same way they'd study a boxer's tell before a fight. So when Halldórsson saved that 2018 penalty, it wasn't luck. Iceland's goalkeeping staff had done their homework on a pattern Messi had built over a decade of instinctive, largely unchanged technique. The very consistency that makes him devastating in open play, doing what works over and over because defenders can't react in time, becomes a liability from 12 yards, where a goalkeeper has all the time in the world to prepare in advance. Here's the twist. The conversation around Messi's penalties usually gets framed as a flaw, a crack in the armor of the greatest of all time. But flip it around. Every single one of Messi's iconic, legend-cementing moments, the World Cup final winner against France, the Copa America final in 2021 that finally ended Argentina's title drought, the Champions League nutmegs, the 4 goals in a single Champions League match against Arsenal, all of it came from exactly the part of his game that a penalty erases: movement, deception, improvisation, reading chaos faster than anyone alive. His genius was never about executing a fixed, rehearsed action under sterile conditions. It was about creating impossible moments out of nothing. The penalty spot is the one place on a football pitch that asks him to be someone he isn't, a mechanical repeater instead of an instinctive creator. And it's honestly remarkable his conversion rate is as high as 77%, given how fundamentally that setup fights against his exact strengths.